Alrighty, guys, welcome to week 12, day 3 of Django. Today, we are going to discuss a little bit about validators. However, before we do that, I want to do just a little bit of a review of some topics that were talked about yesterday, just to make sure that we are fully prepared and ready to engage with today's material. So yesterday, you guys talked a little bit about the Django ORM. So you guys discussed how to update model fields for, in this case, the Pokemon model. So you added a couple for like the date and capture, you added some dunder methods and some class methods that can be applied, which is great. And then the last thing that you discussed was creating a how to create an instance of one of these classes or an object using the Python shell. So let's do that right now, just so you guys can I can make sure you guys have some practice with it. So we'll just do Python manage.py, make migrations, no changes, perfect. So how do I open up the shell? Art, any ideas?
To tell you the truth, I'm searching through the curriculum to look at the instructions.
Okay. Well, let me just tell you guys. So whenever we want to do something within Django, pretty much, you always need to be in the same root directory as your manage.py whenever you are doing anything with Django. So
Yeah.
we'll say Python manage.py
Shell.
shell. Yep. So it'll be Python manage.py shell, run server, create super user. All of these commands that we're running are all tied to manage.py. But in this case, we'll use shell. So always remember this part. You want to do anything, it needs to be prefaced by Python manage.py. Okay, cool. So what's next?
Don't you have to import your tables?
Yep, perfect. So we have to import the model. So let's do that. Can I just say like import Pokemon like that? Should that work?
It has to be like from
Yeah.
from, from something to something.
Yes. So what we need to do is right now, again, if we look back at that folder tree up here, we live in the same directory as manage.py. Is our model located within this list? No. So what we
No.
need to do is now we need to import something from the directory where our model is. So that's going to be in Pokemon app, right? So we're going to go Pokemon app. But if we go back to VS Code and look inside Pokemon app, we have a bunch of files in here. The one that contains it is models.py. So let's do from Pokemon app.models, right? Import Pokemon.
Ooh, excuse me.
So that should do the trick for the first part. All right, where do we go next? So the next thing is we need to create the Pokemon itself, right? So let's create Pokemon. So let's call this P1. Let's see. Nick, what is the command to create a Pokemon?
Um, what is the command to create a poem? Um, let's find my note. I do not remember off the top of my head. Hold
Okay,
on.
let's take a
Yeah,
step back.
I'm so
So-
lost right now. I'm trying to think of what the heck we
I
were
can help. I can help her out.
Well, before that, Cisco, let's take one step back.
Mhm.
What type of thing is Pokemon?
Um, well, Pokemon is a
The class. I mean,
It's a class. Perfect. How do we create an instance of a class?
um
With the class name.
Yeah. So we're gonna type in P1 equals Pokemon.
Uh,
Yeah.
what does the P1 mean?
It's just. Oh, never mind.
Oh, well, that's a good question. Anyone want to take that other than Cisco? Before Cisco takes it?
Just the variable name, right?
It's a variable name. I can call it P1, I can call it Pikachu, I could call it Adam's Pokemon. That's just a variable name. It's just this part in here is just normal Python. So when we open up the shell, we are then typing all our stuff in Python, like normal
Mhm.
Python code. You can run for loops in here, create functions, do file IO. This is just Python. So, all right, so let's create our Pokemon. So the way that we do that, and we'll go back to our models as a guide. For every field in our model, we need to assign something. So we need to give it a name, give it a level, give it a date encountered, and then say whether it's captured or not. So let's
Mhm.
do that. So we'll make a Pokemon, we'll say name is going to be Pikachu, say level is going to be 10, and we'll just say captured is false. And we'll do that. Okay, so if I check my database, does this Pokemon exist in my database yet?
No.
Why not? Or what do I need to do to make it pop up in my database?
You would need to insert it into insert it into the database itself.
Okay, how do I do that?
That's a great question.
Do Pikachu.save
Hmm.
command.
All right, so like that.
Nope. Parentheses at the end.
Perfect. So what the dot save does is it just saves it to your database. The dot save is basically insert into. So insert into Pokemon, new Pokemon with all of this stuff in it. So essentially what you're doing is you're first defining what you want to save to the database. Then we're inserting that into the database. Okay, cool. So that's the first thing. Now what we can do is we can also just print out our Pokemon, Pikachu, right? So it says, yep, Pikachu is yet to be caught. So we know that that was created successfully. And we could also double check that this has been saved to the database without going to the database. How can we check if it's in the database or not? Without going into SQL, with it only in the shell. Does anyone remember?
so to pull up the object in the shell,
Yep.
you would just have to use the class name dot object, I believe.
Objects. Yep.
I forget the rest of it.
So
But
let's just do
no,
that.
it's the class and objects.
All right. So let's see what's in there. So Pokemon.objects. Well, that's not very helpful, but it's a start. So we know that that doesn't break. So let's take a look at maybe dot all and see what's in there. What does that mean to us?
That's where it's stored in memory.
Okay. That's true. However, I made a mistake while doing this. And Cisco, I'm sure you can tell me what it is because it's the exact same mistake I made when doing save. Originally, I didn't do it using parentheses. However, when you're using the .all, that .all is actually a command. So you have to run it like a function. If you want it to come out correctly, now it gives us back a query set. Remember, whenever, just like in SQL, if you run, so what we just did here, Pokemon.objects.all, this is equivalent to select star from Pokemon in SQL. Exact same command. It just says, give me all the stuff inside the Pokemon table, or give me all of the Pokemon objects that exist. And we see now that, again, we have a query set of all the Pokemon in there. How many Pokemon do we have? 1. What Pokemon is it? Pikachu. So that's the way that we can get all of our Pokemon. Now, the way that we can get an individual Pokemon, let's think about this again in SQL syntax. So in SQL, not in Python, can someone tell me the command to get something whose ID is 1?
Select all like 1.
Close.
You want to select all. You want to select all from Pokemon. Where? Let's see. Well, did you say ID? Yeah. So if we
Yep.
had ID, yeah, equals 1.
Okay. So, what if I told you we can do the exact same thing in Python?
Yep.
All right.
You-
Let's see. Joe, you want to take this one? How do we turn this into Python code? It's really similar to what we just wrote up there with
Right.
Pokemon.objects.all.
Instead of .all, would you put 1 in brackets maybe?
So you're saying .all one like that?
No, because .all is querying everything, right? Or
Mhm.
Okay.
so
Oh, so you're saying do this.
no, I was originally saying don't even include .all, but now that I'm thinking about it, we probably do. So
Well, actually, no, you would be right. The command is not .all.
so then just in brackets the number 1.
So let's see what happens if we do that.
Oh, sad.
So the reason for that, again, is so when you run the .all function, that returns a query set. So a query set, so if we do this .all like that, well, actually, I guess we should do a 0. That works. That gives us the Pokemon object, right? That gives the string representation of the Pokemon object. However, this is not the correct way to do it.
Mhm.
The actual correct way to do it is to use a special function called the .get function, whose entire responsibility is pulling things up by where they are in a list. Or in this case, we can grab it by its ID. So the other reason I would use .get is because .get pulls things up. In this case, you can pull it up by its ID. .all pulls it up by its list index. List indices are 0 index because it's Python. .get is 1 indexed. So that's an important distinction to make. Any questions about what we just went over? Again, this should be a review from Tuesday. Okay. If there are any questions at a later point, let me know. In the meantime, let's get back to our models.
Omar, I do have one question.
Go for it.
Just looking at the curriculum back from day 1, it looks like there might be another option to query ID number 1. It's talking about a query set. Can you explain that a little bit? It's like query set and then square brackets Pokemon equals Pokemon object, and then one in parentheses. I guess
Oh,
I could.
yeah. So that is this part. That's kind of what we just walked through. So when you do Pokemon.objects.all, that will return a query set containing your Pokemon.
Oh, okay, okay. So I understood that to be like query set was the actual part of the command, but that's going to be the response when you put in your print statement.
Exactly. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good question though. But yeah, so query sets are things that get returned that we can then manipulate and extract stuff from. Any other questions? Okay, let's get back to our models. So, our Pokemon has 4 different fields. We have a name, we have a level, the date encountered, and whether it's captured or not. So, hypothetically, I could make the name anything between 0 and 255 characters. That's pretty long. Integer field was restricted to being a number. If I didn't put in a number, I'd get an error, which we'll walk through soon. And for Boolean field, if I tried making that it's not like a string or a number, I'd also get an error. Let's add in another field, just for kicks. Let's add in a description of the Pokemon. So I'm going to add in something called a text field. And let's add in a default. I'll just say description is description. So, does anyone know how long a text field can be?
Max is 255.
Well, so that would be if we set it for a character field. In this
Yeah.
case, the text field can be a lot longer. I don't remember how long, but that can be really long. So, let's say that, but it can also be really short, right? My description I could just type in 3 characters or 300, and that would work. That's not really a great way to have a form field. Usually, if you have a form field, it has some sort of minimum length and a maximum length. Now, there's 2 ways that we can do that in this specific case. First one is by applying max length, like I've done up here. The second way, which is what we're going to do today, is add a validator to our field that will essentially, after you input data into it, the field will then check its input via this validator function. So let's see how that works. So a validator is, again, it's a specific type of function in Django that we can import in. Let's see. So we'll import this from Django dot core import validators. And validators is a long word, so we're just going to import them in this as V. So again, here we want to apply a couple of validators. And let's see, somewhere in there, this only has a maximum length, it doesn't have a minimum length, which is what we want to apply, right? We want to say that, let's say somebody has to type in at least one word. One word is like, let's call it 10 characters maybe. So if we go down, we see here that validators is going to be something that is an iterable type containing callable validators. Now this goes back to basic Python. What is an iterable? What is one example of something that's an iterable?
A list or a dictionary.
A list. Keep it the simplest example, a list. So the validators field is going to have a list of validator functions. So validators equals a list. So let's check what's in V. hit V dot, we have a bunch of validator options. Now, you can also design custom validators, which we'll talk about soon. But for our text field, what we said is that we want to have a maximum and minimum length. So let's apply a minimum length validator. Now, what is minimum length validator? That's a class. All right, let's open this up. So we have a limit value and a message. So let's say that our limit value is going to be 10 characters, what I said, and our message is going to be too short. We can also add in a maximum length validator. Now we'll just say limit value for that is 255, and the message is too long. So we've now modified our description field to have a minimum and maximum length conditions. Now again, there are many more built-in validators, some of which you saw when I was scrolling through.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, is something like this? Could you use it to say like you want someone to put 2 words, like for the name, you have to put 2 words. Is that a thing?
It is. And that's sort of where custom validators come in handy. So, let's just take a look right now. So let's just do V dot and see what's available. Maximum length, see what base validator is. Doesn't describe it here. Okay, decimal validator, email validator to make sure it's an email format, a file extension validator, that's kind of cool. Let's see, yeah, allowed extensions, that's pretty interesting. Maximum value, minimum value for numbers, rejects, if you want somebody to input rejects into a form field or into your model, that validates that. URLs. So there's a couple of default options. None of those, however, includes an option for a name. If you wanted to create a name validator, you can do that as a separate function. And you can create that function and import a validator function, which is exactly what we're going to get to in a second. So what I would like us to do before then, though, is I think that we should first test whether our validators work or not. How do we do that?
Using a test file or
Okay.
creating a test file or using the test.py.
That's true. But since I changed my model and my current Pokemon doesn't have this description field.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to migrate, do the make migrations and migrate.
So if we do need to do our make migrations. Now let's do that. So let me go back to my console. Python manage.py make migrations. So it added a field description. Migrate it. And now let's go into our shell. So to make sure that our validator works, what we're going to need to do is say something like model instance dot full clean. So we can't actually run our validators until we clean our model. So see if we can get our, let's say, P1 is going to be Pokemon.object.get ID equals 1. Print out P1. And then we'll also do a P1.full clean, not PY. Okay, so our P1 is now set up. However, we should probably set its description. So let's try that. Let's say P1 dot description equals, let's make it something very short. Let's just make it 1 character. It doesn't look like I got an error. Are our validators working? Who thinks the validator is working? Okay. Who thinks the validator is not working? So, has P1 been updated in the database?
You need to save it first.
Save it. Let's see what happens. Okay, well, it does look like it got added to it. The database is now modified. Okay. Let's try creating a new Pokemon. See what happens. We'll call this one like P2. Is gonna be a new Pokemon. And you know what? Let's just go back all the way up to yeah, let's just create one now. Let's say name, it's gonna be Charizard. What are the other fields that we have in there? Level equals 5. Captured is true. Description is, let's make it really short. See what happens now if we save it. Okay, so it looks like it did get saved to our database. And now let's see what's in our objects.all. Actually, let me double check something. Let's try doing a p2.full clean as well. There we go. That's what I was waiting for. So your validators, the funny thing about validators is they only work so before or after you run a full clean. So generally what you should do when creating a new instance of something like this is first you're going to set up the model instance. So you're going to define your Pokemon. Before you save it, you should actually clean it first. So cleaning it basically runs all your validators and a couple other things that we won't want to bother about right now. But cleaning runs your validators. And we got a validation error saying it was too short. So we can't, so that'll give us an error when we try to save it. So create it, clean it, make sure you don't get any errors, and then save it. Does that make sense? So that's the reason why before, when we just saved it, without cleaning it, we didn't get an error. But now we do get one because we cleaned it. Questions about that? All right, we have one or two more parts to discuss. So the next thing sort of goes to Adam's question, which was about creating a custom validator. Like you said, you creating a name. So here, let me just exit out of the terminal. And just for kicks, let's create like an owner name field. So we'll say models dot character field max length is 255. And this one has to be first and last name. So let's go ahead and create a validator for this. So the first thing we're going to need to do, we're going to need to create validators.py file. This looks pretty similar to our models.py file, except while models is just used for models, our validators.py file will be used to contain all of the custom validators that we write. So when we're using default validators, we import from Django.core. When we are custom writing our own validators, we're going to import a validation error, which is the type of error that we're going to throw. So let's say from Django.core.exceptions, import a validation error. So this will allow us to say if a condition is reached, then throw a specific error. Okay, so, and the other thing that we should probably do as well if we're doing names is import rejects. Yeah, Art, go for it.
I'm still a little unclear when you need to be in your virtual environment to make changes and when you don't. Right now, it seems like you're outside of the virtual environment, right?
I am in my virtual environment. So if we go back to this thing, the way you can tell is because I have VENV on the left, which is the name of my virtual environment. If you're in your virtual environment, your console will tell you that. So
Okay,
you
yeah.
should,
I was looking at your
whenever,
tree.
whenever you're doing anything with Django, you always, always, always want to be in your virtual environment.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Additionally, whenever you're making changes to a database and trying to save the changes in Django, you need your server to be running in the background. Because think about it, if your server stopped and you are trying to save changes to your database, it can't do that because the database is on the server. If the server isn't running, it can't access the database. So that's another thing to keep in mind. All right, so back to validators. So now let's create a full name validator. Let's call this full name validator. And well, let's take in a full name. And we'll just return something. So what is this going to do? This is going to checks if an input is in the format of a full name. If it is, return the name. Okay, don't do anything to it. If it isn't, throw a validation error saying improper format. So, what is the format of a full name? It's going to be a first and last name. Or, we want to make it even simpler, characters, space, characters. So, let me ask you guys this. What is the regex for a full name?
It's like a dumb question. Could you define rejects? Because it's gone in my mind.
Anyone else want to tackle that one?
Yeah, it's that remember the pattern matching stuff we used earlier, Adam. So you can you put square bracket? Well, in this one it would be sort of is it square brackets? Square brackets under lowercase a through z, lowercase z, uppercase a through uppercase z. Um, yeah, something along those lines, I guess.
Star
Okay.
dollar sign
Say again?
with a star dollar sign.
Yes. What does the star dollar sign mean?
Believe it has. I I don't know. I Google it and it comes up. Honestly, I don't remember.
Okay. What does Google say the star dollar sign means?
That's
Or
fine.
if anyone else other than Cisco wants to tackle it. Or Nicole.
Does that?
So I'll give you a.
Oh,
Oh,
never
go
mind.
ahead.
Oh, it's duplicates.
Yes. Now the star lets you have as many characters of that type as you want. So you can have 10 characters like this in a row. However, that's just for the first name. We also now need to make sure there's a space in there. And we want to do the exact same thing for the last name. Now that's going to be our rejects for the first and last name. This part is the first name. You have a space. And then this part is the last name. And then the dollar sign specifies end of string.
Can you guys hear some background talking by chance?
That
Coming
might.
from you?
Yeah.
My bad. My dog is mad right now. It's fine.
No, it's coming from me. Can you guys hear any background sound?
Nope, I
Nope.
think
Okay, good. Just checking.
all right. So, does anyone have questions about the regex for the validator? Regex is this is the reason that we went through those math pattern matching exercises a while ago is exactly for this. Regex is great for format checking and just like do you guys remember that phone number exercise we did like way back when you had to take in a phone number in a really weird format and then reformat it? That's pretty much what this is. It's the exact same principle again. Now this time, instead of changing a phone number format, we would just be checking that it's correct. Okay, so we have the rejects. The next thing we need to do is we need to double check that our pattern for rejects is matched. So let's say we can say like, is name okay? And for that, we're going to do rejects dot, let's see if I can find the function in here, match. And let's see what it says. It says try to apply the pattern at the start of the string, returning a match object or none if no match was found. So to match the rejects is the first part we need to do. Oh, and that's full name rejects. And now the second part is going to be the string, which is full name. Okay, so if is name okay, which means that the name has been checked by rejects and we're good. If that exists, we just return full name rejects. Else, so this part will basically say, is the name properly formatted? If yes, return original name. Otherwise, we're going to throw a validation error. How do we throw or raise an error in Python? Anyone remember the format?
Is it raise?
Yep, so it's raise validation error. And then now we can add a message. Name not properly formatted. And we don't need a return at the end now because that's not going to get reached. It's either going to be the if or the else. That's about it. Any questions? Yeah, Adam.
So, well, obviously it's different than what I'm about to say, but how is that different than just like saying else? Print name not properly formatted. Like, is it going to do something else functionally?
Yes. So what validation error will do is it will stop your code from running from that point on. So for example, print just doesn't return anything. So your name would basically be blank. Because what will happen is we go back to models.py. So when you put, let's say that you type in something into this field. The value of that field is whatever you typed in. Then when we fully clean the model and run the validators on that field, whatever's in that field is going to be whatever results from the validator function being run on that field. So if you do your print statement, it'll print that out, but the field is not going to be what you want it to. In contrast with the validation error, if you run it and it throws a validation error, then you know that something's wrong with your model because it stopped the process running. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Got it.
Awesome. Any other questions about that? Okay, so let's so our name is called full name validator. So let's bring that into this. So let's say from dot validators import, not important, import full name validator. So now we actually have to use it. We can use it by doing the exact same thing. Validators equals full name validator. We do not need to use the function notation here because it doesn't take in any inputs other than the name. I'm just going to call it full name validator, and that's all. Okay, time to put this to the test. So again, we'll go back to our console, go through the exact same process. Okay, sure, we'll make a one-off. I'll just say like space. Okay, and we will migrate it, and we will go into our shell. Time to create a new Pokemon. Someone give me the name of a Pokemon other than a Pikachu and a Charizard.
Squirtle.
All right. Let's say name Squirtle. Level is 15. Oh, I guess we should do owner name first. Adam. Level is 15. And captured equals true. So, do we think that our validator will work or not work on this new Pokemon? Nicole, you're shaking your head. Why not?
Well, you didn't run the full clean yet, but you also didn't save it.
All right. So let's run that full clean. Ta-da! We get an error because the name was not properly formatted. So let's see if we can fix that. So let's say that we're going to redefine it as Adam S. And let's try cleaning it again. That worked. So our rejects successfully worked. Is Adam does not have a space. Adam S does have space, and then it has an S after, so that's all good. So we'll clean it. We can save it. And then let's go through and see all our Pokemon. So we have a Pikachu, a Charizard, and the Squirtle, and they're now all in there. That's really about it for validators. The curriculum page has a little bit about testing and writing unit tests for them, which again is similar to writing unit tests normally. So we won't go through that in too much detail. But before we end, do you guys have any questions? All right, go ahead. Yeah.
The first two Pokemon characters didn't have an owner,
Yes.
so why isn't that kind of creating an error?
That's because that data is already in the database. If data is already input into the database and you update fields after, and you create validators afterwards, usually that doesn't throw an error unless you make it and you go back in and sort of retroactively apply, so to speak, the validators. So usually what I like to do is if I'm testing and my database is out and I'm adding validators and then checking and adding and checking, I'll just wipe the whole database clean, like every time I make a significant change. But sometimes if you make too many changes using old data, Django will throw errors. So in my opinion, that's just good practice to do. And also, again, these are small databases, simple test cases. You can always add in dummy data too. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions?